This is a question that addresses something that most of you talked about in your opening statements. We know that the state has a significant fiscal gap, particularly if you consider the permanent fund dividend. And the question from this person says, what are your plans for closing the fiscal gap for the state of Alaska?
My plan is to work with everybody that's up there. Everything that's been on the table has to remain on the table, to be talked about, worked out. And you have to look for common ground, that we're able to come up with the votes, that we can get 11 on the Senate side, 21 on the House side, and get the governor to buy into. And that's what it's going to take. One person's ideas isn't going to carry it, because it's not going to happen that way. You have to have enough on the table that we can get enough people to buy into to make it a doable thing.
Thank you, Don. Jesse?
The fiscal gap in 45 seconds. Sure. State government always needs to look for ways to get more efficient. There are folks who do that now. I think there are still some parts of our oil tax structure that don't make business sense for us as resource owners, including the treatment of a new oil field as new oil at an incentive rate forever. We also need to sustainably use some of the permanent fund earnings along with constitutionally protecting a dividend for Alaskans. And then we also need to connect a healthy growing economy with the services state government needs to provide, which means some form of broad-based tax. I think an income tax is the most economically efficient and the fairest to Alaskans, in part because it gains a contribution from those who don't live in Alaska but earn their living here.
Thank you, Jesse. Chris?
Right. So I know nobody likes to pay taxes, but I do think that in the short term we need to look at doing an income tax in this state. I believe that if we do an income tax and we have that discussion, that we need to have language in place to roll that income tax back as soon as revenues and oil production and taxes on oil companies reach a point where we're sustainable, so that we can roll that tax back and not be taxing the citizens of the state beyond need. I believe that if we keep it at $1 and do not take that tax off of the books, it keeps future legislative bodies from spending out of control, and it helps hold them accountable for our government. So,
thank you, Chris. Sarah?
I believe we need to look at oil tax credits, because like Jesse said, an incentive to develop a field shouldn't be there once that field's developed. I don't think it should be there in perpetuity. I believe that we will continue to use a % of market value of the permanent fund, and I think most significantly, we need an income tax. And I don't think it's a temporary basis. I think a 1% income tax last year would have generated $750 million. We wouldn't have had to use the permanent fund if we'd passed that bill, House Bill 115. And I think ongoing, we need to restore some of the deferred maintenance that we've had. I can't foresee in the next 40 years that we're going to generate an excess of revenue, but there are a lot of things we could do, like restore $12 billion to the CBR.
Thank you, Sarah. Jerry?
Thank you. I agreed with the decision to use a percentage of market value from the earnings reserved from the permanent fund. The second part of that discussion that needs to take place, however, is a discussion to set that rate at a certain level for the future, because it was only decided for 1 year. The rest of that discussion needs to be, what are we going to do from here on out with that? As it relates to an income tax, if we were to fund in this state just K through 12 education with an income tax, that would be $3,500 for each $50,000 that you earn. That's a lot. A lot of people talk about taxing the out-of-state workers. 17% of the workers. Are you willing to tax 83%, your friends and neighbors, to get that 17%?
Thanks, Jerry. Andy?
This is the most important issue that the legislature will face, is a fiscal plan. My fiscal plan grows Alaska. It's a mix of efficiencies, new or increased revenue, use of permanent fund earnings, making sure we have a robust and lasting PFD. We need to make sure that it provides certainty for businesses and it gives us a good credit rating. People will want to invest in here when they know we have a plan that takes care of our public services, which we value. I think it's also important that we do look to out-of-state workers, and I think there are some ways that you can give credits for residents on different revenue structures, and I will look to all fiscal solutions to make sure which ones can get bipartisan support.
Thank you.